Hello and welcome to FinextraTV's Thought Leadership Series. I'm Hannah Wallace, and kindly calling into our virtual studio now is Derek Corcoran, Chief Experience Officer for Temenos. So welcome, Derek. Thank you so much for calling in.
Oh, Hannah, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
So I want to kick things off talking about the recently launched report you did with The Economist, which analysed over 10 million online consumer conversations on personal finance. So let's start there. What was learnt from the report, and what do you think customers want from their banks?
Yeah, so there's lots of goodness in the report that people can read, but I'm just going to highlight three things that I personally found really interesting. First of all, the difference in what people are associating financial providers with. So on the fintech side, it's financial empowerment seems to be what people are really talking about in relation to the fintechs, whereas the banks, it's trust. And I don't want to downplay this because that is a huge position of strength that the banks can leverage, the fact that people trust. The second is that financial conversations, there's a lot of them that don't involve retail banks. So there are a lot of things people are talking about in relation to money and finance where they're not referencing banking. And that's things like car finance, getting out from under the cloud of student debt, salary expectations in a new job, just some examples of the kinds of conversations we saw where banking wasn't actually referenced. And then the third is investments. So in our current low interest rate environment, people don't want to put their money in a savings account because they're not earning anything on it. So they're inquiring about investment services from organizations like Robinhood. So I think there's a trend towards greater leveraging of investment services within kind of the mass market and the mass affluent customer base. Sounds like an opportunity to me for the banks.
And it's worth talking a bit about COVID-19 because we've seen some big changes across the industry as a result of the pandemic. So let's talk a bit more about that. What changes have you seen within the banking sector?
Yeah, it's been a long 9 months, hasn't it? So a few things that we're seeing: savings have increased. So again, back to that conversation about investment opportunities. I think there's an opportunity for banking to provide a greater level of investment services for the mass market. Digital investment has certainly accelerated. So banks that were relying on branches for certain transactions, and we're particularly seeing that in areas like business banking, where to get a business account or a business loan or line of credit, you had to go into a branch. They can no longer rely on that these days. So there's been an acceleration of investment in digitizing a lot of the transactions that could only be completed in a branch previously. And real estate and transactions have changed. So purchasing of apartments and smaller space locations in higher density areas has changed. People are looking for larger spaces, vacation homes. So they're buying property that actually has space. And for me, one of the interesting things about COVID is that whenever I've tried to change my eating habits or exercise more, people say it takes 6 weeks to form a habit. We've been in this for 9 months. So I think we've been dealing with it for so long that behavior has changed and it will never change back. So there's an opportunity for that digitization. It's already replacing a lot of those services in the banks, and I don't think that's ever going to swing back towards the branches.
Well, exactly. Look at us now, quite comfortable talking virtually rather than in the studio. So highlighting some of the changes and some of the challenges there. How can banks humanize and create intimacy in their digital interactions with customers? What are the problems there?
Yeah, so first of all, the banks are sitting on a wealth of data, and they can use that data to derive insights about their customers. We saw an interesting trend about kind of 6, 8 years ago around personal financial management, where everybody was focused on putting charts into their mobile banking app, so it would show you your spending. And whenever it was launched, there was a big spike. Whenever the bank launched these charts in their digital banking experience, there'd be a big spike, and everybody would check out the charts and go, "Hey, that's cool." And then they never came back and used it. So personal financial management has evolved to actionable insights. So I don't want to see charts telling me about my spending. I want to know if I've got a bill payment coming up that I may not have enough money to cover. So I think leveraging that data plus artificial intelligence to drive those actionable insights is a huge opportunity for the banks to connect with their customers. And then the second thing, and this is really highlighted in the report that we released, Jason Bates from 11FS, who I have a huge amount of personal respect for, he highlights the fact that if you look at the conversations, we listened. or the researchers listened to conversations that were happening out there. And Jason kind of highlights the fact that there's an opportunity for the banks to talk to customers about problems, not products. So if we actually listen to what it is that people are grappling with or struggling with, then we can build innovative solutions to address those problems. And I can give you a personal example. Just yesterday, my wife actually downloaded an app to help, allocate chores to our kids, and then allowance, pocket money for the kids. So it's a really simple example, but it was really hard to find a bank that was offering that kind of an app. It was fintech service providers that were doing it, and then I connected to my banking apps. So there are opportunities, there are challenges out there that people are dealing with. If we ask them about those, we can then really, focus on developing innovative solutions to help them.
That's interesting, and a really good example there. I enjoyed that. And so we also read in the report that the field of financial services is bigger than ever before. So how can banks evolve their business models to better service their customers? What about that?
I think there's a world of opportunity. Again, when we think back to the fact that the banks have people's trust and they have their data, there's just a massive opportunities. But again, a lot of the financial conversations that are happening at the moment don't reference banks. I'll give you again another personal example. Our family bought a hybrid car this year, and it was a conversation with my accountant that told me there were federal and state tax credits in the US that we could avail of by having purchased a hybrid car. But the bank is seeing the data. They're seeing the fact that we're making those repayments of a lease on that type of vehicle. But the bank never reached out and said, hey, there's an opportunity for this to be tax efficient. And in addition to that, leveraging that data, the banks have the opportunity to embed themselves in those conversations that don't relate to banking. And, it's things like student debt, car finance, divorce. Obviously, divorce is not just about money, but it is an aspect of that. But those conversations are happening. They're referencing finance, but they're not in the context of banking. So I think the banks can embed themselves in those conversations and even embed themselves with APIs and open banking in the customer experiences for things like car purchasing. So yeah, banks have the trust. They have the data, that they have the money to make these kinds of investments. So I think there's a massive opportunity if they kind of pay attention to what customers are looking for the banks to deliver more.
Some really interesting points there, and very good advice as well there, Derek. So thank you so much for calling in and sharing your insights. It's been really informative and insightful, but we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for calling in, and have a great day.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Finextra.